Picture this. A bitter winter morning in England. The year is 1855. The people of Devon wake before sunrise, expecting nothing more than another cold, silent February day. Frost clings to the windows. Snow covers the fields like a white blanket. The roads are quiet. The villages are still asleep. But then, someone opens their front door. And they freeze. Pressed deep into the fresh snow is a single line of footprints. Not human footprints. Not the tracks of a horse. Not the paws of a fox or a dog. These were split hoof marks. Cloven prints. The kind people in that time associated with only one being. The devil. The tracks stretched on and on, disappearing into the white distance. They crossed gardens, climbed over walls, passed across rooftops, crossed frozen rivers, and even appeared on the other side of obstacles no normal animal could pass. It was as if something had walked through Devon during the night, something that did not obey the laws of nature. Panic spread like wildfire. Church bells rang. Families locked their doors. Farmers refused to leave their homes before sunrise. Children were warned not to wander alone. Ministers spoke of judgment. Old people whispered that Satan himself had walked among them. But what really happened that night? Was it truly a demonic visitation? Was it mass hysteria fueled by fear and religion? Or was there a disturbing scientific explanation hidden beneath the snow? Tonight, we uncover one of England's strangest unsolved mysteries, the terrifying legend of the devil's footprints. And trust me, by the end of this story, you may start questioning whether some mysteries were ever meant to be explained. If you love real horror, forgotten mysteries, and the darkest true stories history tried to bury, then make sure you subscribe to the Grim Tapes right now, because this channel dives deeper than most dare to go. Turn off the lights, stay with me until the very end, and decide for yourself. Did the devil really walk through Devon? Or did fear create a monster far more dangerous than Satan himself? Let's begin. To understand why the footprints caused such terror, we first need to understand Devon. Devon, located in southwest England, was a place deeply rooted in old traditions, religious faith, and superstition. In the mid-19th century, life there was far different from today. There were no streetlights glowing through the night. No phones. No internet. No modern science available at your fingertips. The night was truly dark. And in that darkness, people believed many things. Folk tales passed from generation to generation warned of spirits in the moors, witches in the forests, and demons that watched from the shadows. Christianity was powerful, but so were older fears buried deep in local culture. People believed evil could leave marks. And when they saw cloven hoofprints in the snow, they did not think of science first. They thought of hell. The morning of February 9th began like any other winter morning. But reports started arriving from multiple villages almost immediately. Residents in Topsham, Exmouth, Lympstone, Woodbury, and many surrounding areas all claimed the same thing. A strange trail of hoof-like footprints had appeared overnight. The prints were described as small, roughly 4 inches long, and shaped like the split hoof of a donkey or goat. Each print seemed evenly spaced, as though whatever made them had walked with deliberate precision. But what made the story terrifying was not the shape. It was the path. Witnesses claimed the trail stretched for nearly 100 miles across Devon. One single trail. Not multiple animals. Not scattered tracks. Just one continuous line. It passed through gardens and fields, over fences and walls. It crossed streams and rivers. Some claimed it went over rooftops. Others said it continued across haystacks over 14 feet high without disturbing the snow around them. In one famous report, the tracks were said to have approached a house, stopped at a high wall, then continued perfectly on the other side, as though the creature had simply passed through solid stone. In another account, the tracks led directly to a haystack, climbed over it, and continued without pause. Some said the prints crossed narrow drainpipes too small for any animal to walk upon. Others claimed they entered enclosed courtyards with no visible way in or out. People were horrified. Hunters attempted to follow the trail, but many gave up. Some were too frightened to continue. Others found the prints disappearing and reappearing in impossible places. Soon, the newspapers got involved. Local papers printed the story, and the panic spread beyond Devon. The Exeter Flying Post became one of the main sources documenting the strange event. Their reports described widespread fear and the growing belief that these were not ordinary animal tracks. One newspaper wrote that the people were filled with alarm, and many were convinced the footprints were made by Satan himself. Imagine reading that in 1855. Imagine living in a village where your neighbors genuinely believed the devil had walked past your bedroom window while you slept. Fear does strange things to people. Once panic takes hold, the mind begins searching for confirmation. Every creak in the house becomes sinister. Every shadow feels alive. Every strange noise outside sounds like something waiting. This was not just a mystery. It became a psychological plague. People began adding details. Some claimed they heard strange sounds during the night. Others said livestock had behaved strangely. Stories emerged of children waking from nightmares before the footprints were discovered. Whether these stories were true or created after the fact hardly mattered. Fear made them real. Religious leaders stepped in. Some ministers warned their congregations that this was a sign of divine judgment. They preached that sin had invited darkness into their land. The hoofprints were not just strange marks in snow. They became a message from God, or from the devil. People confessed sins. Church attendance increased. Prayer meetings filled. For many, the event was proof that spiritual warfare was not metaphor. It was literal. And it had left footprints outside their door. But not everyone accepted the supernatural explanation. Even in 1855, there were skeptics. Some believed the prints were made by ordinary animals whose tracks had been distorted by melting snow and freezing temperatures. Others suggested badgers, foxes, rabbits, or even escaped livestock. But these explanations had problems. Most animals do not walk in a perfect single-file line for miles. Most animals do not cross rooftops. Most animals do not leave identical cloven prints across such varied terrain. And so the mystery remained. Then came one of the strangest theories of all. Some people believed the footprints were caused by a kangaroo. Yes, a kangaroo. At the time, private exotic animal collections were not uncommon among wealthy landowners. One report claimed that an escaped kangaroo from a private menagerie might have been responsible. The idea sounds absurd today, but to frightened villagers, almost any explanation felt better than Satan. Still, the kangaroo theory collapsed quickly. It could not explain the enormous distance, the strange spacing, or the impossible locations. Then there was the balloon theory. Some investigators suggested that experimental balloons had been released during the storm, dragging ropes or chains across the snow and creating unusual impressions. This was considered seriously by some. A loose balloon anchor scraping across snowy rooftops might explain certain patterns. But again, it failed to explain the consistency of the hoof shapes. It also did not explain why witnesses across so many areas described the same split print. So what actually happened? To answer that, we must look at the weather. That night in February was marked by severe winter conditions. Snow fell heavily, followed by freezing rain, wind shifts, and changing temperatures. This matters because snow is deceptive. Fresh snow captures shapes clearly, but as temperatures rise and fall, those shapes distort rapidly. Small animal prints can expand. Melted edges can create strange forms. Wind can erase parts of tracks while preserving others. A rabbit's paw print can become something unrecognizable after hours of thawing and refreezing. a hopping pattern can look like a walking trail. And when fear enters the picture, the brain fills in the rest. This is where mass hysteria becomes powerful. Once the first reports described devil's footprints, every later observer saw the same thing even if what they were actually looking at was different. A fox track became a hoofprint. A bird landing became a supernatural sign. A rooftop mark became proof of demonic movement. The story fed itself. Psychologists today call this confirmation bias. People do not simply observe reality. They interpret it through expectation. If you believe Satan walked through your village, every mark in the snow becomes evidence. This does not mean people were lying. It means they were human. And fear is one of the strongest lenses through which humans see the world. But there is another layer to this mystery that makes it even darker. Victorian England was already living under immense religious anxiety. This was a period of disease outbreaks, social instability, harsh winters, and deep uncertainty. Death was common. Child mortality was high. Poverty was everywhere. People wanted explanations for suffering. And supernatural explanations often felt more meaningful than random chance. The devil's footprints arrived in exactly the right psychological environment to become a legend. It was not just about snow. It was about fear searching for a shape. And it found one. Still, some modern researchers suggest there may have been multiple causes. Instead of one mysterious creature making 100 miles of tracks, there may have been many ordinary animal tracks across different villages, later combined by rumor into one massive supernatural trail. This is extremely important. Newspapers in that era were not always careful with verification. Stories were often exaggerated, especially when they increased sales. A strange track in one village became a regional phenomenon. Separate reports merged into a single terrifying narrative. People who had never seen the footprints themselves began repeating details as fact. The devil's footprints may have grown not in the snow, but in conversation. And once a story enters folklore, facts become almost impossible to separate from fear. There is also debate over whether the tracks truly crossed rooftops and walls, or whether those details were added later. Some historians believe the most impossible elements were exaggerations created after the event became famous. This would not be unusual. Legends evolve. Each retelling adds sharper claws. Each witness remembers more than they first saw. The ordinary becomes impossible. And the impossible becomes immortal. Yet despite all the rational explanations, something still lingers. Because even today, when people revisit the original reports, there is a strange consistency. Too many people described the same thing. Too many villages reported the same fear. Too many details survived. Even skeptics admit the event is unusual. And that is why the mystery survives. Not because we know it was supernatural, but because we cannot fully prove it was not. This uncertainty keeps the devil's footprints alive. It sits in that perfect space between folklore and forensic mystery. Too strange to dismiss. Too fragile to confirm. Exactly where legends thrive. And perhaps the most disturbing part is this. The devil may not have needed to walk through Devon at all. People did the work for him. Fear spread faster than footprints. Panic crossed villages more easily than any creature could. The true horror was not what made the marks. It was what people became after seeing them. Neighbors distrusted the dark. Children feared the snow. Faith turned into terror. One winter morning transformed an entire region. That is the real power of belief. And history shows us this again and again. When people are afraid enough, they do not need monsters. They create them. But let me ask you something. What if the rational explanation is not enough? What if there was something out there that night? Something that moved silently across frozen rooftops while families slept. Something that left just enough evidence to be remembered, but never enough to be caught. Would we even know the difference? Because if something truly unnatural walked through Devon in 1855, it would leave exactly what was found. Not a body. Not a witness. Just footprints. A suggestion. A question. A shadow pressed into snow. And maybe that is why this story refuses to die. Because deep down, part of us wants it to be real. We fear monsters. But we are fascinated by them too. The devil's footprints remind us that the scariest mysteries are the ones standing just outside certainty. Close enough to imagine. Far enough to never touch. Even now, nearly 2 centuries later, people still debate what happened that night. Historians argue. Scientists explain. Believers insist. And the snow, long melted, keeps its silence. No final answer. No confession. No proof. Just a trail leading into history. And perhaps that is where it belongs. Because some mysteries are stronger unsolved. Some stories survive because uncertainty feeds them. And some footprints are meant to remain in the snow forever. So now I want to hear from you. What do you believe? Was the devil's footprints incident simply distorted animal tracks and mass hysteria? Was it an elaborate hoax? A weather phenomenon misunderstood by frightened villagers? Or do you believe something truly unexplainable walked across Devon that freezing night? If you had opened your door that morning and seen those cloven hoofprints leading past your house, would you have followed them? Or would you have locked the door and prayed? Tell me your theory in the comments. I read them all, and honestly, some of your theories are darker than the stories themselves. If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of history's strangest unsolved mysteries, make sure you subscribe to the Grim Tapes for more real horror, forgotten legends, and disturbing truths hidden beneath history. Like this video if it pulled you into the mystery. Share it with someone who loves unexplained stories. And stay close. Because the next story might be even darker. Until next time, keep looking into the shadows. Sometimes, they look back.